The BetterMan podcast presents This Is Who I Am, featuring Coach Kennedy.
Man, what's happening, BetterMan fam? I'm so excited for today's special episode. There's a tremendous movie coming out called Average Joe. It's the story about Coach Kennedy. We've got him on the show today. He's going to be sharing some of his story, but before we jump into that, as you know, one of our core tenets at BetterMan is a real man, God's man, courageously follows God's word. And Coach Kennedy is a living example of a man who courageously followed God's word, did not go against his conscience or God's word in courageously stepping up. And he courageously stepped up coincidentally by taking a knee, which is so cool. So, man, I'm so happy. Coach, how are you doing today, brother?
I am great. Thank you, man.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Tell our listeners, man, who you are, and if you wouldn't mind, just jump into your story. They made a full-length movie, a feature film about your story, about what happened, and man, we'd love to hear some of that.
Yeah, how weird is that? I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. That's only God. So, yeah, I was unwanted birth. My mom put me up for adoption. Thank God she didn't abort me. That was in the conversations at first. Adopted into a family. They couldn't have kids, and they started popping them out like crazy, and they didn't really need me anymore. And I became an angry kid, full of rage. Got kicked out of the house, ran away a bunch, was in group homes, foster homes, boys' home, sometimes homeless, and really just trying to make it in the world. And by the time I turned 18, I knew that I was headed down some bad roads. I had this little old nun that told me only thing I ever brought to the world was pain and suffering, and that it stuck with me, man. I did not want to be defined by my past. I saw too many people that I was hanging out with that were just living this life forever. And I wanted to become something more. So I joined the Marine Corps and kind of found my little niche, and picked up the discipline, the team building, and all the leadership you need to make it in the world. And I just fit. I found my love for my country and the Constitution, and really felt like I was making a difference in my life, and was being defined by what I was accomplishing according to the world. And I was living for the world. I did everything you could possibly imagine. I was an atheist. I lived in sin, and I was a train wreck of when I look back, the way that God looked at me, he was like probably pretty disappointed with me. And then I met up with my childhood sweetheart. We got married, and she was a good church girl. And, that always changes your life a bunch. And I was failing as a husband. I mean, horribly, I was failing as a husband. And as a father, she had some kids from a previous marriage. And I didn't know what to do. I was losing the girl that I've been in love with since I was 9 years old. So I ended up going to church, falling on the altar and saying, God, I can't do this on my own. If you give me my wife, I'll give you my life. And wow. He took me up on that, like just boom, man. He was like, deal. And next thing I know, I'm being approached by the athletic director at a local high school and to start coaching football. And I tell you the truth, I don't know anything about football. It was not my thing. I was a little guy. I was 4'10" till my sophomore year. So I had little man complex. I was a wrestler, and I used to fight with all those jocks and football players when I was a kid. So I didn't know anything about football, but I was watching the movie Facing the Giants, and let me tell you, God reached through that TV set and grabbed my heart and just threw me to the ground. And I'm bawling my eyes out. I hate to say it in front of a bunch of dudes, but I was bawling, and I was like, God, I hear you. And I mean, I heard my calling for the first time, and that is a cool place to be when God calls you. And I said, I give you the glory after every game, win or lose. And so I started coaching football, and I coached for 8 years and prayed after every game. Then in the 8th year, things went sideways. They told me I needed to choose between my faith and my job. It led into a nasty legal battle over the next 8 years. And yeah, it kind of brought us up to where we are today.
Wow. Wow. So there you are, you're coaching football, moved by facing the giants. I love that. I love how you're giving your life over to the Lord and you tell him, hey, win or lose every game, I'm going to give you the glory. So, I'm assuming you take a knee after every game to pray. And then at some point, I guess the school district has a problem with that.
Yeah, so everything was fine for 8 years. Nobody's ever had a problem with it. And then in our 8th season, we were a couple games in. One of the one of the people administrators from another school district came to one of our football games, and of course it was against one of our big rivals, and there was bad blood between us. There was a couple fights going on in the game, but after the game, we all got together. They invited the other team, and we all prayed on the 50-yard line. And this guy was just so impressed with it. He called our principal and said, "Hey, I just got to tell you, I went to my first football game here, and I got to tell you what your football program is doing is awesome." So all of this started with a compliment. They started an investigation to find out what was so awesome, and they told me that I needed to stop praying with the kids because it could be misconstrued or whatever, the separation church and state and all this other garbage that they started giving me. But it was their school, their rules. And I just wanted to coach football, man. I didn't want to fight with anybody. These guys are my friends. They're my family. Yeah. And I just wanted to continue coaching. And then they finally told me that, so I stopped praying with my team, never prayed with them again. And, but they said, we can still see you out there. And they said, you need to give me a directive to stop praying or I'd be put on leave until I complied with the school district's policy, our directives. And I couldn't do that as a red-blooded American, because I was an American before I became, a follower of the Lord. And man, it torqued me. I was really pissed. As an American, I just could not believe that they were telling somebody that they can't pray in public because somebody might see you and be offended. That's not what the Constitution says. So I took a firm stance and ended up getting fired for it, and which led to that long battle, which sucked. It really did.
Yeah. Yeah. Where does your courage come from? Because you've alluded, you had a tough upbringing, you were kind of discarded. You said, you were 4'11". Where does all this courage and conviction? Because really, it sounds a lot like conviction. Where do you think this comes from for you?
Well, it obviously now I realize that everything has come from God, and He's had His fingerprints on since the beginning. When I was still in the womb, He had all this designed out, and all the trials and the things I went through as a kid toughened me enough. Really toughened me mentally, physically, and emotionally to withstand battles, which led to the Marine Corps, which fit real perfect because we had paid to fight, which was awesome. And that prepared me for really standing up for our country and defending the Constitution. That I took that so seriously when we did the oath of enlistment and I raised my hand. I mean, it still gives me the goosebumps and makes the little hairs on my head stand up on it. That it means something. It means something to me. So, God, little did I know, God has been preparing me for all this time. And when we took that oath of enlistment to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I didn't know that was for life. I fought when I was in the Marine Corps, but I didn't know that I'd be fighting for our religious freedoms and our First Amendment after I got out of the Marine Corps. But God has, totally designed my life for, and not to get all biblical, but for just a time as this. He knew what He was doing in His design, and it played out exactly according to His story.
Come on, man. Hey, we're all right with you getting biblical, bro. You can bring it. There's nothing but free.
That's about all I know about the Bible. Tell you the truth.
There's nothing but free speech on this show, man. That's so good. And really, that is God's MO. It's amazing how He can take not just our failures, but He can take our hardships and turn them into His message turn them into his glory. You know, historically he's always done that. He's always taken the underdog. And it seems like those are the guys that are most receptive to follow his lead and to allow him to work, man. So I'm so encouraged and glad that you allowed him to work through you because it got serious. I mean, you went all the way to the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, I went there twice. They'd rejected it the first time, sent it to the lower courts, which started the whole process over again. So yeah, all the way to the Supreme Court.
And then the second time you won.
Yeah, thank God. Because let me tell you that I wasn't worried about winning and losing. That part wasn't the part that bothered me. Of course, I wanted to win and get my job back. But the way that the lower courts ruled, that scared the hell out of me. I was freaked out because the way the lower court ruled that any display of religion in the public square can terminate you. Now, if I didn't win this case, that would have been the standing law, and I would have screwed it up for all Americans. So I felt like I had the weight of the entire American people on my shoulders, because if we lost, I just screwed everybody. We're done. And I didn't want that to be my legacy, is that I messed up religious freedom for all Americans. So thank God that he showed up when he did. And we got those Supreme Court justices in there that Trump put in there. So see, he knew what he was doing. I didn't know what he was doing, but he knew what he was doing.
Coach, what did it feel like when you got that winning verdict?
Yeah, that was just a huge relief. I wish I had more time to celebrate and feel like I accomplished something, but it really was just a weight of the world off my shoulders, knowing that I didn't mess it all up for everybody. I mean, it felt good, but I didn't have a chance to actually really celebrate it, because the only thing I asked for was to be able to pray, or to be reinstated and to pray after football games. I wasn't asking for much. God did the whole thing, and the American people praying for it, that's what turned it around and made this such a huge legal victory for all Americans.
Yeah. So after the verdict, do you go back to the school? Like did you go back to the school you used to coach at? What was that like?
Yeah, I went. Terrible. Talk about facing your giants. That was tough. Walking in there and getting my reinstatement letter. Over there at the front desk where my wife used to work, and say, I'm here to be reinstated. And the people, I mean, this is 8 years later, and they look at me like, okay, reinstated for what? And I'm like, football? They said, well, who are you? And I said, Coach Kennedy. Then you hear the panic go across the district. And so they reinstated me, gave me my letter. I went down to the high school to go check in with the head coach. And he says, well, spring ball starts this afternoon. I'm like, outstanding. Where do you want me? And he goes, for you to get all your stuff certified. And I'm like, what? So they hit me with all the red tape for the next 2 weeks to get all my CPR, all the training. And this is spring ball. So you don't need any of this stuff until the actual school year and the season starts. So I spent 2 weeks trying to get up to speed on everything. And because I was going to play their game, I was like, you want to play, we'll play. And so I wasn't allowed to step on a football field for the first 2 weeks. I came back here to Florida to take care of Dad for a while until fall. I told the coach, I'll see you in the fall. So I showed up fall practice. 2 days, fall camp, went to every one of those and went to the first game. And after the first game that next week, I ended up resigning and just walking away from coaching and the school.
Yeah, that had to be tough, especially in light of what you had gone through for 8 years. You had secured the victory really for religious freedoms, yet you go back and it doesn't feel like you're wanted.
Oh, they made it very clear, and it wasn't the coaching staff. I give props to them because they were put in a terrible position. Imagine being the head coach of a football team and all your coaches been working together for 8 years, and all of a sudden the school district says you have to take this guy into your program. Yeah. But they were pretty good. But the school, they were like, but here's all the stipulations. He's not to talk to any of the students. He can't attend any of the functions. And I mean, they just made it really, they took all the fun out of coaching. And so I thought it was better just to be able to walk away with my head held high and resign on my own terms and go on to bigger and better things until God calls me to do something else.
Come on, man. And Coach, I haven't known you for that long, but what I do know about you is that seems to be your MO. You're always looking out for others. And whether it's the Marine Corps and you're willing to lay down your life and sacrifice for others, whether it's taking this 8-year journey and going to the Supreme Court on behalf of Americans and religious freedoms, you're willing to lay down for others, and coming back to your team, and they're basically not being a place for you. And instead of forcing that, you said, you know what, this is what's best for these coaches. This is what's best for these student athletes. I'm just going to step away. And man, that self-sacrifice and that selflessness, it's a trait that is lost on most men today. We live in this me culture, this I culture, this self-driven culture. So the fact that you're embodying that over and over and over again, man, I just want to applaud you. And from one man to another, tell you thank you. Where do you think that sense of selflessness comes from? Did the Marine Corps really build that into you, or was it before that?
Well, when you live in the way that I did, I was always trying to look out for everybody in the foster homes and group homes that I was in. You see the worst things that happen to these kids and things that never should happen to another human being. And they're happening around me. So I did what I could to protect them. And I didn't think I was worth anything. I still question a lot of that. But I think that, God's given me this gift of being able to protect people and to be able to fight and do that. So I want to use every bit of that to look out for the people that have been around me my whole life. And in the Marine Corps, we had to rely on our buddies, the guy in front of you and the sides, both sides. I didn't want to let them down because their lives are in my hand. So it really instilled that. And growing up, I got to grow up like you, man. We watched John Wayne and Clint Eastwood and these guys that were real men. And that's the way I wanted to grow up. That's the epitome of what I think a man should look like, is that strong type that will give up everything to protect others. And I wanted to live my life like that. And I didn't know anything else. I didn't want to be one of these sissified, wimpy dudes. I wanted to be a man, and I wanted people to see me as a man. And God made me with that fighting desire, so I just use it.
Yeah, that's so good, man. There's something within a real man that wants to protect others, and so much of culture today says that that's toxic or that's archaic, when in reality, it's exactly the way God designed it. I tell people all the time, I'm in Texas, Coach, so if I'm lying next to my wife and I hear someone kick open the front door of my house, I don't nudge her and ask her to go check it out, right? No, I get up, I grab my shotgun and I go. That's right. Yeah, I go check it out, right? And that's because that's what real men do, and God has put that in us, and not just put it in us, but He gave us the perfect example of that in His Son, King Jesus, who came to earth and laid down His life for His friends. He laid down His life for His sheep, for those that He loves. And man, that's where our hope comes from. That's where our courage comes from. That's where our conviction comes from. So again, it's so encouraging to hear your story. And now they made it into a movie. Like, the movie comes out this weekend, October 11th. It opens nationwide in theaters. Man, what was that process like, bro? Tell us about that.
It's so weird. And, I'll struggle with this the rest of my life. It's like, who am I? I am nobody. You always doubt yourself. And, I think a lot of that has to do with the enemy telling you you're not worthy. But God has something to say to people in America today. And that's the only reason we wrote a book and the movie's coming out this week, is because God has something to say. You see, the Reagan movie just came out. The Forge came out. God's not dead. This isn't just by accident, willy-nilly, and just by coincidences. I think God really has something planned for America, especially right now before the elections and all the stuff and turmoil going on in our nation. I think God is wanting us to stand up as, the strong people that we are. and be able to just turn ourselves to God and turn our country around instead of doing what the Israeli people did for Jewish people did and kept turning their back on God and getting their butts kicked all the way, throughout history. I think we got a chance that we could change America. And if we just turn our eyes to God, and that's why the movie's coming out now, is to inspire people to get off their butts and do something.
Oh man, that's so well said, because we know that the light shines brightest in the darkness. And we've been living in some dark times where literally a culture is trying to strip us of not just who we are, but of our religious freedoms. And in that darkness,
we've been letting them.
Yeah, we've been
letting.
That's
the hard part, is we've been letting it. And this happened on our watch. Where are all the men that are like, no, this isn't happening anymore? I mean, they become non-existent. I love women. Mama bears are the best in the world, but they're the ones that are leading the country right now. And our men, and they need a good kick in the butt to realize what God has made them intended to be and start living that life.
Hey, that's why BetterMan exists. Hey, we may change our slogan to a swift kick in the BetterMan, but no, Coach, you're spot on, and we need to stand up and or in your case, sometimes take a knee and push against culture and push against the darkness and really live what it is we believe. Man, Coach, I'm so excited for you. I love your humility. I love your authenticity. For all of our listeners, the movie comes out this weekend, Average Joe. You can check out trailers online. You can read more about Coach Kennedy's story. You need to go see the movie. Grab some friends, grab some family, grab people from your church, people from your community, and go see what courage looks like. And as you know, with BetterMan, our one of our core tenets is a real man courageously follows God's word. And courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward in spite of fear. Courage is moving forward in the face of fear, that no matter what happens, you're going to stand on your convictions. You're going to stand on God's word. And Coach, you've been a living example for that. So on behalf of BetterMan, on behalf of men across this country, man, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We're for you. We're with you. We're pushing people to the movie. And just want you to know we're grateful for you, Coach.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to finish with the Bible verse that's on my arm.
Absolutely.
It's 2 Timothy 4:7. It says, "Fight the good fight, finish the race, and remain faithful." And that's what got me through all of this. Is we're called to fight the good fight. Nowhere in there does it say that we need to win. That's God's area. God's already won that. So only thing we need to do is just show up and remain faithful for it.
Come on. Fight the fight. Press on, Coach. Grateful for you, man, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Sounds good, buddy. Call me whenever.
All right, buddy.
Average Joe releases in theaters October 11th. Check out averagejoemovie.com to find showtime near you.